Without further ado, I want to introduce you to Tammy Trevino. So if you haven't met Tammy, you need to meet her. She's the regional administrator for Region 6 for HUD and lives in Fort Worth. And so she's here to share all kinds of things with you today. A little bit about Tammy. She actually started in the medical field and then went into urban planning. And then she spent a lot of time with USDA out of Washington, D.C. And then now we are blessed to have her at HUD. So would y'all help me welcome Tammy Trevino?
Good afternoon. Great. It's wonderful to be here. I was telling Christy that my first experience with TAP was in the mid-2000s when I first got into housing development and decided I thought I wanted to do a low-income housing tax credit with the little nonprofit that I had big dreams. I had big aspirations, and I'm kind of like Tom. I don't like no for an answer. So if someone said no, you can't do it, you're too little. I think I'm off. There we go. I never really listened. I saw need where need existed, and I always felt like I could do as much as possible, and I was going to try to fill it. But it is good to be here. I did get a lot of experience when I started attending TAP. I remember the very first one. I was a little overwhelmed, and I knew I was out of my league. And I went back to my board of directors and said, we're shooting a little big, so let's start a little bit smaller. And that's exactly what we did. We went back to the drawing board and started with smaller projects and started by understanding what asset management was, and if you're going to build it, you're going to have to manage it, and that's how we thought we could be a one-stop shop. So I'm really impressed at the organization and how big it's grown. I understand that this year it's the biggest conference ever, so I really congratulations to TAP and to all of you who support the industry. Thank you to the president, President Iyer, and to all the organizers of the event. HUD is always happy to be at the table and to provide training. You know, we're always changing the way we do business, and especially with this administration coming in, working for the Obama administration, and specifically now under Secretary Castro. I believe that we all are trying to move in the same direction. There are a lot of things happening in the background. I'm so tempted. This morning I listened to the first HUD panel, and I was listening to the speakers, and every time they said, I'm not really sure why they do this, I want to raise my hand. I know why we do it, but, it's not my turn to speak, and so I can't just get up there and tell you what we're doing in the background. But, when Monica mentions, you can try a waiver, but, they don't usually work and they take forever. And I know why. I know what's happening in the background. But so there's a lot that goes on. I know just as you have all your back office operations and all the people who are back home making sure that the deals that you're working on continue to still happen. That's what's happening at HUD all the time. One of the other comments that I heard this morning is that, maybe they need to transform this. And I'm not sure if it was, we were still talking about the waiver process. Well, believe it or not, there is an emphasis right now at HUD to improve waivers and how they come forward and who's looking at them and the process for how you submit them and how long it takes and why it takes so long and why is it that even when I call up there I can't figure out who's working on it. So there are a lot of things that happen in back offices. I am really pleased to see such interest in the HUD programs. I was glad to see that the room was filled to capacity just about this morning and that you continue to come year after year to hear what HUD had to say. I have a little bit to tell you, not a whole lot. Somebody wrote a 28-page speech for me. They asked me, what do you want to talk about? So I said, I want to talk about the Housing Trust Fund. I want to talk about fair housing, maybe some broadband. Let's talk about Century of Cities. How about the working groups? And so they wrote all this up. And I said, whoa, I'm going to put people to sleep, especially while they eat. So it's really nice that you get to eat. I've been in your shoes eating when somebody's speaking, and if I try to spend time eating if I'm not interested. So those of you who continue to eat, I know you're not liking what I'm hearing, what I'm saying. So that's usually what I do, is I pretend I'm eating. So no, seriously, keep eating. I'm kidding. You know, Tom mentioned today that HUD has a new model, and this new model is supposed to and has affected our ability to move forward faster and our ability to move forward on your deals more efficiently. So while, you know, funding of the Housing Trust Fund and our efforts at energy efficient homes, energy efficient mortgages, fair housing, while all of those are really important for what we do at HUD every day, I think it's just as important for you to know that we will continue to work on things such as waivers and other aspects of the processes that you all have to follow. It's no secret that affordable housing is a need nationwide, so what you do is important. Right now there's a shortage, and you all may already know this, so bear with me. A shortage of 7.2 million affordable housing units for the nation's more than 10 million extremely low-income families. Tom mentioned this morning that a no doesn't necessarily mean never. It just means not right now, and let's fix it and move forward. So we're all in this together. So while the shortage of 7.2 million units is a monumental task, we can attack it one project at a time. And that's why a no is not a never, because all of your projects are important to us, and we believe that they will all make a difference in the long run, so they're all a priority. If you look at the landscape of Americans right now, those earning between $30,000 and $45,000 a year are finding it hard to secure affordable homes. Specifically in Texas, over 850,000 renting households have to spend more than 30% of their income on rent. So let me give you a situation on why we believe that every project is important. Recently, we dealt with a flooding situation regarding a multifamily development in Houston. We were challenged by the Houston Chronicle for providing subsidies to units that were in floodplains, and specifically HAP contracts. Well, technically speaking, the bottom line is that if a property has and maintains its flood insurance, we're required, as within, and it's required even with regular homes, then it's a good to go project for us programmatically. We have to fund it. The real underlying story is that we can't afford to lose these affordable housing units. In the city of Houston alone and the Public Housing Authority, there are 20,000 people on their waiting list. So every single unit of affordable housing that you build is important, and it's in all our interests to make sure that it gets done. We're constantly striving to improve, constantly striving for transformation of all our processes. How many of you are familiar with the Housing Trust Fund? Did we get a lot of money this year? No, but it's the first year we've gotten anything at all. So the state of Texas has received $4.7 million of the $170 million of Housing Trust Fund. $170 million for the entire nation is not a lot. However, Texas received the third highest allocation, second only to California and New York. In a nutshell, you all know that it will require that at least 90% of the funding will go to preserve, develop, and/or operate rental housing, with 100% of the funding dedicated to extremely low-income households. So it's not a lot of money, but it's a start. And it's the first new funding program that we've seen in many years. The second effort that you're seeing at HUD are the regulatory changes for energy-efficient mortgages. We believe that the MIP rate reductions announced will positively impact FHA's multifamily housing programs by encouraging the installation of energy-efficient systems or building within federal energy guidelines. FHA estimates that the multifamily insurance rate reductions will spur the rehab of an additional 12,000 units of affordable housing per year nationally. That means that over the next 3 years, about 40,000 families would benefit from a higher quality and affordable housing. It isn't a whole lot, but we believe that it's a start in the right direction as well. Making these housing units 20% more energy efficient will, in the long run, just these housing units, preserve $8 billion per year and cut greenhouse emissions by over 430 million tons. So FHA's multifamily business, which traditionally generates significant revenue for taxpayers, these changes should leverage over $400 million in new mortgage financing for affordable housing, energy-efficient developments, without significantly decreasing overall revenue. So a second, that's another effort. Let me talk to you about affordable housing. I want to spend just a few minutes because this is at the crux of what HUD is about. Affordable housing and the ability to access for everyone the fair housing rules. How many of you are familiar with the new AFFH rules? Do you know that every city that gets HUD funding, every state, local agency, and public housing authority will need to create in the future a new comprehensive plan that addresses the brand new guidelines under affirmatively furthering fair housing. These rules have changed. So while the comprehensive plan development and the need for it, if you're funded by it, is not new, the process for how it will happen is new, and the guidelines are new. This is HUD's effort at leveling the playing field and making sure that folks who need affordable housing are going to get it. It is a proactive approach for many cities in combating NIMBYism. Recently, we had a situation in one of our large cities in Texas where I call it Beverly Hills Drive. So great city, great neighborhood, huge opportunity. The ability for that developer to create his low-income housing tax credit project in this area, those obstacles were huge. You had the congressman, the local city council district. You had many, many folks against this project. It is one of the first projects in high opportunity areas to ever be proposed in this city. Consistently, this large city had built in the poorer sections of town, in those that were distressed, racially segregated, and impoverished. And the ability to build in a high opportunity area, the ability to build on Beverly Hills Drive was just not going to happen. Think back on your ability to create a good, fair housing plan in your comprehensive plan. If that city contained a comprehensive plan that said, here is where we're going to build in the future. Make no mistake, the AFFH template and the new rules and guidelines on AFFH require that a city create a comprehensive plan that is going to be balanced in nature. You're not only going to build in areas that are distressed and need to be improved, but you also have to provide housing in high opportunity areas. And if those two concepts are not built into your plan, it will not be approved by HUD. And if you're a city who gets millions of dollars in CDBG funding every year, it is to your advantage. It is to their advantage, to that city's advantage, to create a plan that will be approved. This plan just became, this new regulation was just signed. We have, in our area, there are only 2 cities that are early submitters that will have to submit this year the new comprehensive plan. But over the next 5 years, every city, every PHA, and every state government that gets funding from HUD will have to have a plan that addresses fair housing and that uses the new AFFH template. Now, if you're a developer and you want to build, you need to be familiar with this comprehensive plan and with how it's going to be developed. So luckily, not a lot of cities in Texas have done it yet, but they're all coming up. And every public housing authority will have to be part of the planning for this new rule. Guys, this is a game changer. For the state of Texas especially, I believe that this rule is a game changer. The ability of this city to reject a plan in the scenario that I gave you a while ago would be non-existent. That city would be very hard-pressed to reject a plan on Beverly Hills Drive because of opposition from NIMBYism. If it's in their plan, they would need to fulfill the plan in order to continue to get funding from HUD. So this new rule, a lot of folks are wondering if it was created as an enforcement tool, and it wasn't. The Fair Housing Act has been in place for decades. This is just a way to now determine how we're going to implement this plan. So is it going to be used as an enforcement tool? I would say that if it has to, it has to. But HUD's not here to be the heavy. We're here to remind folks who continue to take HUD funding that there is a responsibility and an accountability that HUD expects. And one of those is the ability to provide fair housing to all who want it. One other city, the other thing to keep in mind, and I'm going totally off script here because this is something I'm very passionate about. The other thing that's very important to remember is that we are currently living in what's called the century of cities. By the year 2050, more than 80% of the U.S. population will live in an urban center. If you live in Austin and you're poor and you have a house in an area that's going through gentrification, where are you going to live when you are priced out of your home? If we don't have the providers of affordable housing like all of you that are in the room to provide a place for people to live within the cities, these folks are relegated to the outskirts of the cities. You already see everyone moving to the outskirts where housing is more affordable. We have to make housing affordable everywhere within the city. If our cities grow to the point that all the poor are on the outside, think of what we're going to look like 50 years from now. How many of you have been to like India, New Delhi, Mumbai, and seen the slums that you have to pass in order to get to the city center? There's just so many people. We don't want our folks living on the edges of town just because they are poor. We need to provide the working poor the ability to live close to where they work. All of these are things that we need to keep in mind as we move forward and we start thinking about where affordable housing is going to be located. I believe that it's an important concept as we move forward into the future. I don't believe that you as an industry will have the challenges that the cities and the PHAs are going to have in putting together this comprehensive plan. But it will be important for you to know as they build their plan where their high opportunity areas are and where their development plans are. I see Tori in the room. It's good to see you, Tori, because I know we've been dealing with him and some of the issues that they've had. We also deal a lot with the Fort Worth Housing Authority. It's always good to see you all here. I think you're going to see a lot more about affirmatively furthering fair housing. You're going to see a lot more about disparate impact and the things all the issues that are related to fair housing in the future. These are not things that you deal with, as I said, on a day-to-day basis in your jobs and in what you're doing if you're a developer, if you're a funder, if you're an asset manager. But they all have they're all going to have an impact. It's all going to be, you're all going to have an effect one way or another further down the road. So I tell you all of this just so that you'll give you a heads up on what's coming. Now, there are many other changes that will be happening at HUD and not necessarily to the multifamily area. But how many of you deal with public housing authorities? How many of you are not public housing authorities but deal with public housing authorities? So right, that's a lot of you. So that means that each one of you needs to know what your PHA plan is going to look like if you're going to be working with them. We'll be looking at it. We'll be looking at the plans. We'll be approving them. And once they're approved, they're pretty much set in stone for the next 5 years. So if I was the city that was dealing with the low-income housing tax credit project on Beverly Hills Drive, if Beverly Hills Drive was in my comprehensive plan, I'd be building there. The city wouldn't be telling me no. So you kind of have a blueprint for where the cities are going in the future. I'm not going to mention a lot more other than you know that this administration will be in transition over the next 6 months. So I don't know what will change and what will not change. The good news is that we got through multifamily transformation. So the big part of what impacts you as developers this year will be done. California, as Tom said this morning, was the last region to go. They are still trying to catch up with the rest of the country, but the great news is that when Tom and his group, including Kelly, who was heading up multifamily at the time, say hello, Kelly. They did a wonderful job in communicating how transformation was going to happen. And they did a great job in documenting what was working and what wasn't. So transformation into the future and in this the last region to go, it's pretty much been pretty seamless. The only things that differ, as we were talking earlier, are the types of projects that are coming in. I was just reminded that 40% of San Francisco's projects are RAD projects. But we have quite a few RAD projects here also. I was recently in El Paso, and they're totally converting all their housing to RAD and using a lot of tax credit projects. So just my point today is to tell you that every one of your projects is important. We're going to continue to move forward to try to make the process as seamless as possible. We're working on a field working group that includes headquarters, that includes people in the field, all across the disciplines. I heard earlier we work in silos at HUD, and so who knows why CPD is doing this, and who knows why the environmental portions don't work. Well, we're working, we've got field working groups right now that are working on the environmental processes. We've got folks that are working on troubled assets. What are we going to do about troubled assets? You know, my book says that this place got a great REACT score, but if I look at it, it's just deplorable. So how are we going to mesh what we're doing, what every different division within the department is doing? So all these field working groups will continue long after I'm gone in January, long after Secretary and President Obama are gone in January. These field working groups will continue to try to make your life easier. When you have ideas, I think I mentioned this the very first time I spoke to TAP as an appointee. I said, when you have ideas that aren't working or ideas that do work, that would replace ideas that haven't worked, you need to tell us. And don't be afraid to come to me. Because if you can convince us that your idea is great, we're the ones that have the ear of the secretary, and we have the ear of the administration. So whether it's me here in January, probably not, but whether it's me or the next person, not because I'm making a prediction on the election at all, only because I'm not sure what I'm going to do in January. But whether it's me or whether it's someone else, always take your ideas to that person. If you're getting nowhere with the people you're working with, take it a step higher. I know Tom does not hold anything against you if you come to me instead of to him. I can tell you there are plenty of people out there who will come to me. Now, I'm going to send it to Tom. I say, Tom, what do we do? He always has a great answer. Oh, it's at headquarters. That's even better. If you come to me with an idea, and Tom says, I already sent it to headquarters, but nobody at headquarters moved, that's even better. Because I have a direct line to headquarters in the secretary's office. And I can say, why isn't this moving? What about this idea did you not like, and why isn't it moving? Don't ever be passive about what you do and think, it's never going to happen. Never is a long time. And 7.2 million units that are still needed in housing are a lot. So we care about every project. We'll continue to work with you in everything that you do. Continue to ask questions. Don't be complacent. Don't be comfortable in what you do, because the minute that you do, the rules are going to change. Thank you.